As I mentioned, this game is a prequel to the original Planet Stronghold, and it actually takes place not long after the colonization of the planet itself. Here, you get given a choice between one of two protagonists, siblings, Alex and Diana Nelson. I am assuming that this choice affects you much as it did in Seasons of the Wolf, changing your romance options but little else. Correct. The two siblings arrive on Planet Stronghold as co-captains, there to jointly oversee operations on the planet. And ultimately, it really is about them responding to the situations that arise, which actually means that your comparison is pretty accurate. You mean comparing it to Seasons of the Wolf? Yeah. In a way very similar to that game, it feels like there isn't much of an overarching plot, and instead it's more just a year in the life of these people. And as a result, it's not the plot that sees you through, it's the characters. Which is pretty good here, because overall they are pretty good characters. Oh, I love it when you break out the strong praise. Well, I aim to please. The game's supporting cast is, for the most part, pretty interesting and well written. And I'll be honest, talking to them in between the actual missions is definitely the high point of this game. With that said, I think a little more work needed to be done on the actual character introductions, simply because the game just kind of drops most of them on you at once right at the beginning of the game, and it takes you a while to sort out who's who. Frankly, it's a little confusing at first. It's not a long-term problem, as once you get the characters sorted out in your mind, it's not any kind of issue, but it does make some of the initial game a little bit confusing. It can occasionally become a problem for writers if they forget that the audience doesn't know their characters as well as they do. It can be something of an issue. Hey, stop it. I will freely admit that this is not an issue by the time you reach the mid-game, because by then you've had a lot of conversations with these people, you've learned their names, you've learned their personalities, and honestly, it works pretty well. It could just have used a couple of rewrites, I think. Overall, though, the character work is really good, but since this is a Winter Wolves game, I'm sure there's one question in particular that everybody wants to know the answer to. How many references are there to other Winter Wolves games? Loads, but that wasn't actually the question I was thinking of. No, the question I was thinking of was, how are the romances? And honestly, they're pretty good. They're certainly not the best Winter Wolves have ever done, but overall I think they're all pretty interesting. And it's worth noting that there is actually a decent amount of variety. Each of the two protagonists has 2 romance options of each gender, giving you a total of 4 for each character, and since there's no crossover between the two, that's a total of 8 romances. A substantial number then. Oh yeah, and I suspect there'll be a few people who will actually replay the game enough times to actually see them all. Overall, I think the story is solid and enjoyable. It's definitely not one of Winter Wolves' best, and it suffers from having a relatively weak main plot, but honestly the character work is strong enough that you can get quite a lot of enjoyment from it regardless. Overall, the story is pretty solid, though it does definitely have its weak points. The art for this game is gorgeous. While I cover a lot of visual novels on this channel, almost all of them feature what I would dub a traditionally anime or Japanese art style, which frankly I am not that much of a fan of. Here, however, the game uses what I would dub painted reality, and it is gorgeous. I have no problem saying that the character sprites here are probably some of my favourite from any visual novel I've ever played, even if their angry faces do make them look just that little bit constipated. Regardless though, the card art is also good. It's not as good, but it's still pretty damn good, and the romance CGs are absolutely beautiful. Overall, I cannot be complimentary enough about the art. The music for this game is okay. It's nothing massively memorable, but it serves its function pretty well. Although I will say that the main theme of the game, which plays over the credits and over the main menu, is just not to my tastes. I'm not going to say I dislike it, I just don't get anything from it. It's just not my style. Which doesn't mean it's bad, and I want to clarify that. It just means it's not for me. As to the rest of the audio work, the voice acting is present, but it's extremely limited to the point where I don't remember any examples off the top of my head. While the audio effects will be familiar to anyone who's played a Winter Wolves game before. They're not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but they're nothing new. Overall, the audio work is just okay. So, did I enjoy Planet Stronghold Colonial Defence? He's right, I did. Should you buy it? While I maintain that this is definitely not Winter Wolves' best game, I would certainly say it's a worthy addition to their catalogue. The card battle system was an attempt at something new and different, and for the most part the experiment works. While I could have wished for a little more complexity in the card battles and a stronger main plot running throughout, I'm happy to say that Planet Stronghold Colonial Defence is a solid, enjoyable experience. It's not their best, but it is pretty good, and I do think it's worth your time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a question I've been meaning to ask. I'll see you later. Spot, can you give us a minute, please? All right. Out with it. Out with what? The ring. What about it? You have been flashing it at the camera none too subtly for over a month now. Since you clearly want me to ask, I'm asking, what's with the ring? Well, I thought it was time to accessorize. Martin, I know you better than that. Hell, I know me better than that. Neither of us just accessorizes without good reason. I suppose not. It was a gift from our mutual friends. They wouldn't actually tell me exactly what it's for, but they implied that we're going to need it. Would it kill them to ever just explain things directly? You know, I rather suspect that it would. Fine. Just next time you talk to them, tell me about it, okay? You know you suck at volunteering information. And I wonder who I get that from. Fair point, I suppose. Still, I'm going to take Spot out for a walk. You coming? Yes, I think I will. I still fail to see how a dog that small can move that fast.